G'day everyone, Kyle Ropa here at the local land services demonstration site at Singleton. Today we're going to have a bit of a look at the dryland component of the demonstration site here. We're also going to have a bit of a chat about commodity issues that I guess the agricultural sector is facing at the moment with supply and pricing, as well as some animal health tips, I guess, just to keep in the back of your mind going into spring, summer. I guess this year in terms of dryland, we've seen very favourable seasonal conditions. It's been absolutely excellent for establishing pastures. We've had some really good results with chicory, lucerne and clovers, which I guess many people have probably seen clover production this year throughout the valley being some of the largest amounts of clovers in our pastures that we've seen for years, which is, I guess a combination of 18 months of favourable conditions and a good seed set off last season in terms of white sub clovers in the pastures. Some of these perennial species like lucerne and chicory especially have been becoming a major part of dryland pastures with their deep roots and ability to handle dry conditions. So in these good conditions we've had, establishment has been excellent. Similarly, we've had excellent production results with ryegrasses and other perennial grasses that we've sown. We put in those atypical grasses that we see throughout the valley, so phalaris, coxwood, prairie grass, fescues, all of which have done well. Obviously fescues and coxwood are especially hitting their straps now with really big spring production, as we've always called them the king of spring. Now is a very timely part of the year to manage them correctly so that they don't lose quality and to get the most out of them over the coming months. In terms of the demonstration site here, we've had 3 grazings off it. Some of you might have remembered the video we did about a month ago where I was describing that I had too much feed in front of me and we're going to take this off as a cut of silage in my grazing rotation, which we did do. So we've ended up with three grazings plus a cut of silage, which went really well. The only thing that's probably suffered from that were the brassica plots within the demonstration site, which obviously their nature's not to be cut, they are designed to be grazed. So as much as I tried to lift up the mower, they have suffered from being cut, but everything else has really bounced back really well, and it's helped level up the playing field as well and take that residual back, which is an important management tool, I guess, if feed is getting away from you in your rotation, is looking at taking that excess feed as a cut of silage so that you don't lose quality. So we've moved across to some of the ryegrass plots here in the demonstration site. On our right here we've got some tetraploid annual ryegrass, which obviously most people would know the baseline tetraploid annual as Totila ryegrass, or the common type. Where I'm standing in the middle we've got a diploid Italian, and to my left we have a diploid perennial. What we just wanted to kind of, I guess, demonstrate was on the right here with the tetraploid annual, the product itself looks really good and really showy. We know that it's going to come to an end probably going into the first week of November or late October. We can see a few seed heads in amongst it. In the diploid Italian where I'm standing, it's really powering on and still growing very strongly. We should see it continue through to late December. And with the perennial ryegrass, obviously being a perennial, it will continue through to next year. Now, the key thing that I guess we've been taking out of the last few years of I guess ryegrass in the demo site is how well Italians have done and how much more production we're seeing from that late spring, early summer production out of them. And I guess the other factor is quality. So when we talk about these tetraploid annuals, yes, they look really big and showy, but they generally don't yield as well as what a diploid Italian does over the, I guess, obviously the lifespan of the crop, but also in between cuts. In these plots you'll see that the density of the tetraploid is far less than that of these diploid Italians or the diploid perennial, and that's an important factor for grazing as well. So we'll usually find that these diploid Italians will handle higher grazing pressures due to that higher tiller density, resulting in a better stand for longer. So I guess the decision to make, if you've got fairly good quality country or you've got irrigation, is taking that next step up from say your $3 a kilo annual and stepping up into that $5 or $6 a kilo Italian, and what that may do for your business going into having that later spring production and potential to make hay or silage or just longer grazing. Just thought we'd quickly pull up here in between the Coxwood and the prairie grass plots. They've done really well this year and have been a standout for the last couple of years in the demo site here. The Coxwood here, in terms of spring and late spring production is going to give ryegrass a run for its money, which is quite incredible for how good it looks and what kind of dry matter we'd be looking at here. And similar to that of the prairie grass, we've seen a massive uptake of this in dryland pasture systems. Incredibly palatable feed, palatable seed heads even, and also just on another note away from the cattle and the sheep side of things, I guess it's also a very safe horse grass, prairie grass. So, it's something that has a fit in a wide array of pasture situations and really good quality feed in spring and early summer. We've just come across the irrigated part of the demo site just to, I guess, talk a little bit about grazing management and grazing preference, which is a pretty cool thing to see here in the demo site. We've got some images of how we've actually seen the cattle really go for the chicory and the plantain, so those herbs, as well as the subclover and the annual Persian clover as well, versus say some of the other feeds, the cereals and the ryegrasses that are in here. So, and why we see that and I guess why we mention it is, the quality factors of clovers and chicory, obviously their palatability, so they'll usually preferentially graze them. So it is an important thing, I guess, with your grazing management of, if you do have a mixed sward and things like that, is knowing when to pull cattle out. So some of these images you see here, which is very hard in the demo site where we want to graze the ryegrass a little bit harder, but we've already grazed the clovers and the chicory to probably where we want them to. So just an interesting thing to take note of. We're also strip grazing this, so you can see here next to me we've got a tread-in fence separating the cattle from the feed they're on to the new feed they'll come into in a couple of days' time. We'll also back fence this, so what that means is the cattle don't have access to go back into the feed they've previously grazed, so that allows that to come back and we don't overgraze that feed past its growing point, which is something to be aware of in spring. You're going to have ryegrass and your cereals growing points getting a lot higher. Grazing management's a key thing. I guess we've always spoken about it in these demo sites, so being aware of that and good management will in turn produce more feed for you. So a couple of big issues facing I guess the agricultural sector at the moment is fertiliser prices and commodity prices for agricultural inputs have been skyrocketing. This is a combination of both a very positive agricultural sector locally, so in Australia, but also globally quite a strong agricultural sector, in America and South America, with high demands for fertiliser and I guess other agricultural products, herbicides, pesticides, things like that. So in Australia in the last, say, 8 months, we've seen urea prices nearly double. We're seeing urea prices in stores, between that, $1,200 and $1,300 a tonne, which is, quite scary, I guess, for growers looking at using nitrogen as an input into your system. We ran some figures not long ago where we were looking at the benefit to dry matter production in terms of using nitrogen, and it's still very viable to use even that costing. We're working on around about that $140 a tonne to produce a tonne of dry matter when you're using urea at, say, 100 kilos per hectare, because we are in this springtime off ryegrass and Coxwood and those kind of quality pastures. You can be looking at that 20 to 30 to 1 response from nitrogen into dry matter production. So it's still cost effective to use, and I'd encourage people to not be frightened by where we're headed with the prices. If you do want to produce feed, it is still a lot cheaper than buying in, say, an equivalent quality hay, which would be, say, lucerne hay, which you're not going to be able to land for really any less than, say, $350 to $400 a tonne. So when you're looking at that cost of, say, $140 to $150 a tonne to produce on farm, it is still far cheaper than buying that commodity in. Going forward, I think an important thing to look at is planning and talking to your local agronomist or your local rural store about actually the availability of product. I think going into summer cropping, if that's something you're looking at doing, or even the following autumn for your autumn planting next year, products that we see could be in having issues are your starter fertilisers and DAP. They have also gone up in price drastically. I think it's an important thing, if you know you are going to look at planting those summer or do an autumn crop, is looking at securing them. I think price is where it is, and that's where it's going to stay for a little while, but a big thing is going to be product security. And if you don't get on to, I guess, ordering or telling your suppliers you want product, you may miss out. That is probably one of my major concerns going forward, especially when we're in favourable conditions and there is a lot of positivity for people to plant. So we're seeing record plantings out west, which is putting local supply pressure on our fertiliser industry. Similarly to that in terms of agricultural chemicals, extremely expensive at the moment. We've seen glyphosate, which is obviously one of the most common herbicides used in agriculture, has doubled in price in the past, say, 4 months. Supply is going to be a very big concern going into early next year. So I'd suggest if anyone's starting, I guess your summer fallows and things like that, getting on board with getting some product on hand. That's going to be a very important aspect. We've seen glyphosate go from that $6 a litre to we're estimating prices in January, February being upwards of $13 a litre. A massive jump and a massive additional cost to your program. I guess on a positive note, we have seen record cattle prices, and they have also been a very positive thing for people selling cattle, and those prices seem to be maintaining, have been for going on 18 months, 2 years now. So we see a lot of positivity in that sector, and I think it is important to focus upon that and continue to produce quality feed as well for those cattle going forward. And the most important thing is your weight gains and animal health in that sector. Just coming back to, I guess, seed supply. In terms of seed supply, we don't see any issues, whether it be for a summer crop, whether you're doing corn or sorghum or millet or cowpeas and things like that. Seed supply is pretty good at this stage. And for the autumn cropping and pasture sowing, at this stage, everything looks really positive in terms of ryegrass and cereals and clovers and things like that for pastures and sowing of autumn 2022. Probably just a quick reminder, and it's been something, I guess, at the demonstration site field days we've harped on about, but I guess basic animal health practices are a very important thing at the moment when you look at, I guess, stock prices and cattle and sheep prices as high as what they are. Losses to simple things like blackleg and pulpy kidney have been quite high throughout the valley, and I think it's been something that the LLS vets and I know myself in the shop have continued to advocate is vaccination of cattle and doing that regularly, especially if you're changing onto new feeds. So if you've got weaners and things like that they're coming onto quality feed that you see around us like this in spring, very important to throw another 5-in-1 at them if you can, and just be onto those issues, and even just working out your drench program and things like that, talking to your local store or your vet and just working out where you're going. There's a lot of new dual active drenches on the market now because we have seen such a reliance on single active drenches, and their efficacy is obviously dropped and their effectiveness is not as good as what they once were. So yeah, have a talk to your local store about things like that and be onto it, because your daily weight gain, I guess, is where the money is when we see prices where they are. So if you can increase the weight gain of your cattle per day, it means, number one, they're not on your farm as long, so you can potentially have a higher carrying capacity, and you're moving those cattle on quicker to let your pastures recover and potentially have more feed for your breeder stock and things like that. So there's flow-on effects of having a really positive animal health program in place, which your local vet or your local rural store should be able to help you out with that. So obviously with the current COVID-19 situation for 2021, we've only been able to have the one field day this year at the site. There may still be the chance of one late into December. We do not know at this stage. It will just depend how things continue to travel. But on that note, we'd like to thank especially all the suppliers that have been part of this demonstration site. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. A lot of time and effort gets put in by the representatives for those companies, and we do really appreciate their support. It is all done as a community kind of group project to give back to farmers and the growers, and we hope everyone gets a lot out of it. And I'm I know I enjoy doing it, and a lot of the suppliers and things enjoy being able to come in contact with their customers, which is, I think, a very important thing going forward. So we hope to continue what we've been doing, and hope to continuing this project into 2022. And again, just like to put my thanks out to all the people that have supported the local land services demonstration site for 2021.